Hello everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar, Why Mari 5.0 was made for you. My name is Elise and I am your virtual host today. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the webinar and to introduce Foundry's Look Development Product Manager and Associate Product Manager, Rory Woodford and Charlie Holt, as well as Creature Specialist Gaël Kerchenbaum and Texture Supervisor Peter Aversten. Together, they will present Mari 5.0 and then participate in a live Q&A. But first, I have some quick housekeeping. Today's webinar is being recorded and a copy of the recording will be sent directly to you when the webinar is over. Also, we welcome you to say hello in the chat, ask questions, and answer our polls, which will launch shortly. Today's webinar is part of Foundry's Greater Virtual Event Series and is actually our last webinar of 2021. You can find all of our webinars available on demand from the past 2 years on our website at foundry.com/events. I'd also like to encourage you to check out Foundry Learn, where you can find developer documentation, release notes, tutorials, and more for Mari and all of our other products. Here you can see a few examples of the tutorials that we have available, including new ones for Mari 5.0. And if you're interested in learning Mari, there are several licensing options available to get you started. If you're a student, you may be eligible for our free Education Collective license, which includes Mari, Nuke Studio, Katana, and Modo. And if you're not a student, we also have non-commercial licenses, individual subscriptions, and 30-day trials available. I also want to call out that Mari is taught at many universities and as part of specialty programs. Here you can see a few of the schools that teach Mari, and if you're a student learning Mari elsewhere, let us know where you're studying in the chat. Also, there are many learning resources available beyond Foundry Learn and formal programs, including Peter's Meshmen Studio YouTube channel. I know Gaël has some tutorials to share, and also Michael Wild, Mari for Beginner course. He just released the 8th chapter to that. You can find that all on YouTube. Also, if you're looking to stay up to date with Foundry, you can do so by checking out the many articles on the Insights page of our website, subscribing to our newsletter, and staying tuned for more virtual events to come in the new year. Also, if you're on social media, you can follow us at the Foundry Team or at Foundry Team. And for any artists that like to share their creations on social media, please tag it with the hashtag #MadeWithMari or other made with hashtags. We love to see your work and to share on our channels as much as possible. I'd also like to add that if you need to reach Foundry, there are several options. For anyone that has product-related requests, you can submit a request by logging into Foundry's support portal, going to the My Support tab, then selecting Submit a Request. You can also visit the community page to participate in the forums, and if you want to reach us directly, we welcome you to email virtual.events@foundry.com. And finally, thank you to everyone who has joined our virtual events series this past year. We couldn't have done it without each and every one of you, and we're looking forward to bringing more great content in 2022. So without further ado, we'll move on to the main event. The next part has been pre-recorded for streaming quality purposes, but we'll be here with you in the chat and we'll come back for the Q&A. I hope that you enjoy the webinar.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this look into Mari. Mari 5. I'm going to touch on some example workflows that you can achieve with our new brush engine, and then walk you through our new USD pipeline workflows. Artists working in Mari 5 can experience an unprecedented level of precision and creative control thanks to our newly introduced dynamic color controls to the brush engine. Artists are able to adjust the color effect for each spot of their chosen brush tip as you paint a stroke across the canvas. Meanwhile, the much requested hue, saturation, value brush jittering feature has been added, with the ability to precisely adjust the range of each of these effects together or in isolation. Each new jittering effect can be configured to either change color on a per tip or per stroke event, allowing artists to create more stylistic brush strokes than has ever been possible before. Mari 5's enhanced brush engine also includes improvements to generating file-driven brush tips. Artists can now specify whether a brush tip's alpha is generated from an image's red, green, blue, alpha, or luminance channels, or the ability to utilize the full RGBA color data from an image file, including color space controls, which enable artists to splat decal images as their brush tips. I'd like to show you a couple of practical examples of how you can harness the power of our new brush engine. Here is a full color brush image of a green leaf. I can turn on hue jittering per tip, and by default it is shifting the green hue of the leaf 720 degrees towards reds and blues at the same time. I can first drop this down towards the reds only, but at -1 it's still jittering across 360 degrees of hue, so I restrict this range to just as -0.2, and my brushstrokes now deliver me scattered leaves of all the autumn colours. I can also enable pen pressure, which allows me to control the hue based on how hard I press my pen down. We'd love to see what artists can come up with using this new style of decal painting. Here is an example of using the color jittering between your foreground and background color to create a stylistic cartoon blue eye. Traditionally, you could jump between your two colors with opacity to get a mix between them. With the precise range controls, I can have each splat jitter just 25% towards the background color. As you can see, I can get more than just a straight blend between these two colors now. I can get more blue hues as I paint. I can switch between the foreground and background colors with the X key as I did before, allowing me to build up darker and brighter hues across the iris, getting me a pretty great result. Finally, here is an example of painting stylized skin for an animated character. I first pop out a floating image color picker tab and drag my color managed reference imagery to it to be able to quickly pick colors as I paint. Secondly, I have my brush settings configured to ever so slightly jitter the hue and saturation of brush color on a per stroke basis. And now I can easily pick and paint the skin with each brushstroke, shifting its color slightly. With more and more non-photoreal animation projects being produced, I'd love to see what art-directed characters artists can achieve with Mari 5. Now I'd like to walk you through the new USD workflows in Mari. Open source by Pixar, USD, or the Universal Scene Description, is an interchange format that allows you to layer many 3D elements like characters, environments, cameras, lighting, and effects simulations into a composited scene called the stage. Mari makes use of this format to create a project from USD files describing models, and then transport the textured look for the model to other digital content creators like Katana. Let's first look at the USD model import dialog. This portion of our USD workflows was originally prototyped by Pixar. Its UI has been limited by Mari's custom geometry plugin framework, so it is not as user-friendly when compared to the built-in Alembic and FBX plugins. However, we've extended the plugin framework in Mari 5, and as Foundry has taken over development of the USD plugins, we intend to develop the UI into a more intuitive experience in future. So let's have a look at some of the options you'll need to get your USD model into Mari. I want to import a USD version of Gaël's dragon asset. I'm going to use the USD View standalone application to better illustrate the contents of this USD file. You can see the model's hierarchy is made up of various mesh and Xform locations. If I use Katana to inspect the UVs of this model, you can see that the body, tongue, and teeth have their UVs laid out in UDIMs, but the eyes and corneas are UV'd in the first UV patch. This means I'm going to want to bring this model in as two objects, one for the meshes with the UVs and UDIMs, and one for the eyes. Let's start with the meshes that have UDIMs. The first import setting in the UI is Load, which contains three modes. The mode First Found will only load the first mesh found in the USD stage, which won't help us here. Going with the second mode, or Models, is usually the more useful setting to use. However, as we only want the specific body meshes with UDIMs, I'm going to use the Specified Models in Model Names mode. For merge type, I want all the meshes merged as a single Mari object, so I'll choose Merge Models instead of Keep Models Separate, which would make a Mari object for each USD mesh. For the Model Names setting, I need to enter all the mesh locations. I can get these from USD View. If I select all the meshes I want to import, their absolute paths get displayed at the top of the interface in a text box. Now unfortunately the Mari importer doesn't yet support spaces in the model name setting, so for now you'll need to manually remove these spaces after each comma. But once that's done, a simple copy-paste will get these mesh locations into Mari's import UI. The UV set and mapping scheme work together to determine which available UV set in the model should be used for painting within Mari. If the USD file has multiple UV set names across the meshes, they'll be listed here. The mapping scheme defines whether or not to create Mari objects with UVs or PTEX. If you have a mix of objects with UVs and without, the default option will only create PTEX objects for the meshes without UVs. The rest of these options I'll leave as default, as I don't have animation to import or any model variants. With the project created, you can see I now have the specified meshes merged as one model. I just need the eyes imported as a second object. So going to the Add Object button in the Objects palette, I can rinse and repeat the previous steps, but specifying the eye meshes in the Import window. And there you have it, a USD model in Mari ready for painting. Let's jump ahead to my finished painted dragon and look at the new USD Preview Look Authoring workflow. The dragon was textured against the Arnold Standard Surface Shader and has channels and bake points ready to export high-resolution maps for final rendering in Arnold. But I also want to author a preview look for this dragon to be used in hydro-powered viewports in digital content creators like Katana. So alongside the Arnold shader, I'm going to create a USD Preview Surface shader which now ships with Mari 5. I connect the same channels and bake points to the relevant inputs of the USD Preview Surface shader for both body and eye objects. In the scenario where your production renderer shader doesn't have channels that match the Preview Surface shader, you have the opportunity to blend your various channels together and make a composited preview only channel. Once you have your preview shaders plumbed into your channels, you can export this look to a USD Shade document using the new Export Manager USD Export tab. Once you've switched over to the USD Export tab, the first thing to do is ensure your objects are going to convert the correct shaders you made into USD materials. You can do this by editing the table at the top of the window. In the center of the window is the breakdown of each shader and the channels or bake points connected to its inputs. The columns specify the targeted size, color space, bit depth, and image format overrides. These can be fine-tuned to your project needs on a per-input basis. At the bottom are the exporting options used to define the main parameters of the preview look file you want to author. To start, set your texture target directory, as this will act as the root path for all your exported texture and USD files, or other file parameters in this window will be set as relative to this root path. Next, define a global texture file name template using replaceable $token words. This parameter can be used to configure the file format of all the export targets. However, if you need to mix and match, you can override individual export target file formats in the center table. The USD look file parameter specifies the USD shade document name that will be created, containing the materials, shaders, texture nodes, and material assignments. The root name needs to match the root name of your original model USD file. So if I pop over to USD View, I can copy and paste the path into Mari. With the UV set name, leave it as is. ST is the standard name for UV sets when working with USD, but some digital content creators that allow you to export models to the USD format may have their UV set names defaulted to map1 or something similar. If this field is changed or left empty, your UV set name will not be correct and your textures will not map properly. By default, Mari will just export the look as a standalone shading network. This could then be used as a common look element that is referenced by many other model payloads. However, if you just want a USD file with the look coupled with the model you created the project with, then you need to configure the export window to create an assembly USD file with the model payload. To create the assembly, you'll need to specify both the target USD file name as well as the source model payload USD file. The payload will usually be the same model file that you used to create the project with. Once assigned, the assembly file will reference this model payload and composite the exported look file on top of it to get the resulting USD file with your shaded model. With the USD export parameters now all configured to your liking, you can review the individual export settings for each of your preview shaders inputs and fine-tune where necessary. As I am exporting to an 8-bit PNG and my project is using an ACES color config, I'll quickly retarget each input to either utility sRGB texture or utility raw, depending if the shader input uses color or scalar data respectively. There are also temporary override options available, like in the main Export Manager window, which I can use to quickly override bit depth or resolution. And after all that, we can now export the textures and have Mari author our USD files. With everything exported, I can now test the new look in USD View. Once loaded, I can now see my preview shaders looking great in the viewport. I'm just going to hide the cornea meshes so that you can see the textured eye behind it. If you look at the scene hierarchy, you can see all the material and shader locations that have been added to create the preview look in USD. Here is the file again, but seen in Katana's Hydra viewport. Authoring preview looks in Mari 5 is just the beginning of our USD journey, as we are currently designing far more extensive workflows for your look development pipelines. For some assets, like props and environments, signing off as look development with Mari's approximation shaders is sometimes all that is required for the show. So when the texture maps exported from Mari are sent to a shading artist, all they would do is plug the maps directly into the relative BXDF shader and assign it to the same model file the Mari artist had originally created their project with. With the introduction of the USD Shade standard, This step of the shading process can be completely automated and performed at export time within Mari. Next year and beyond, we are planning to extend our USD look exporter to support vendor shader contexts alongside the preview surface, so that a complete and final USD material can be generated from within the Mari project. We also want to enable artists to use Mari selection group tools to drive submesh location and facet-based material assignments, with the vision that all your look development of flattened texture-driven shading networks can be completely authored within Mari. And that's the look into Mari 5's paint and USD workflows. Try Mari 5 today at foundry.com. Thanks for watching and happy painting!
Hi everyone, and a big thanks to the Mari team for inviting me to this Mari 5 webinar. I'm Gaël Kerchenbaum, and I'm currently working as a creature specialist at Facebook AI. I've been using Mari for 8 years now on various projects, mainly focusing on creatures, modeling, and texturing. Today I'm going to speak to you about this dragon I did for Mari 5. I'm going to speak to you about my organic approach of surfacing, my smart material approach of surfacing, and some of the Mari 5 features I'm super excited about. Let's start with the breakdown of the dragon. Okay, let's speak about the texturing I did for this dragon. So the first map that was super useful, and this is a map that I'm always using, so this is why I call it a one map to rule them all, is a displacement map. So using the displacement map, what you want to achieve is to be able to separate it or to customize it the way you want, so you can really isolate the various pieces of your model. Some other maps that were super useful were isolator. So these guide maps are basically super easy to achieve. So what you want to do is you just want to paint some black and white information that will correspond to the various areas of your model. You split all of these maps into their own channels, into their own nodes, so you can edit them later on during your organic approach of texturing. As a sculptor, something that I always found super important for my texturing is to reproduce my sculptor mindset. Which means that whenever I'm working on an asset, I want to work from the primary volume to the secondary volume and then conclude with the tertiary volumes. In order to do that, I'm trying to, again, separate my texturing into various areas using the isolator, but then later on use some procedural nodes that Mari gave me access to, like clouds, for example. Then the displacement is really coming into play. The customized displacement is really coming into play. Using the customized displacement, what you can do, for example, is to isolate all the cavities of your model and say that you will want to have, for example, some dirt coming directly inside of the cavities of your sculpt. And you will be able to use a cloud and populate this inside of the cavities with the procedural nodes coming inside of Mari. Then something that was super important was to age the texturing of the scale, or to make it look more natural. So once you texture the primary and secondary colors of your model, something that you will see is that your model will look really flat, and you need to add a new model information to your model. You want to add the age information. You want to make it look more lively. Again, the displacement being split into various isolator maps. What I was able to do was to use some adjustment nodes inside of Mari and say that, for example, I wanted to have the edges or the border of the scale to look more milky, to look more whitey, and to look less saturated, as if wear and tears were coming into play. You can also finally emphasize everything that is coming on your model using, again, this same displacement, this map to rule it all. You can emphasize things that are happening. You can do a global adjustment on your texturing, which is something that I did also on the Dragon. I wanted the scales to be more visible, so I used my isolator for the scales and some HSV or brightness lookup nodes inside of Mari, and I added more contrast to this region. Every time when I'm working on an asset, I'm trying to have this same and consistent artistic approach. So I'm working from the primary to the secondary and then the tertiary. Having this really consistent approach of texturing helped me to create my meta material. So this same material, this smart material that I will be using on all my different assets, on some region of my different assets, and that I will combine with one another. This is something that I did for the Dragon as well. I used the texturing that I did previously for one of my personal projects on a Sphinx cat. This Sphinx cat was pure skin, and I wanted to use this material of skin and to populate the region that were looking similar on my Dragon. So for this reason, this skin material was used on the gum region and the tongue region of my Dragon. Again, try to be super consistent when you are working on surfacing, and also try to keep everything really understandable and non-destructive. Once you will see that everything is non-destructive, what you can do is you can use your previous texturing, and you can use that to convert your texturing into a material. That's the feature that is super powerful inside of Mari. With this material, you can texture an asset in a matter of hours rather than in a matter of days. This material can also be something that you want to use into your production. If you have access to a skin material, or if you have access to plastic material, then you can use this plastic material in order to texture super quickly and automatically an asset that you took time to sculpt. Nuke has previously been my tool of choice when I wanted to convert my displacement into various utilities. So this workflow needed me to be able to go back and forth between ZBrush, between Nuke, and between Mari in order to be able to have access to my new customized utility map, or my new isolator. So this was a really efficient approach that I had access to in the past, and this helped me also to create a lot of different information. So as I said before in this video, I was able to use my displacement and customize it, so I could isolate all of the small details coming from the sculpt in order to texture them differently or separately from the rest of the albedo of my dragon. With Mari 5, we now have access to a super exciting feature, at least a super exciting feature for me. This feature is the breakpoint filters. With the new breakpoint filters, what you will be able to do is to remove the usage of Nuke, and you will be able to do directly your texturing inside of Mari without the need of going and using another 3D package. These breakpoint filters are also editable. As before, what you want to do is to make sure that everything stays editable for a more procedural and editable approach. You don't want to have a destructive approach of your texturing. This is exactly what these breakpoint filters will help you to achieve. So I'm really excited by this new feature, and I'm really looking forward to use it for my next texturings. Now, I'd like to emphasize the fact that Mari 5 and Mari in general has been a tool for production, but also for artists. Mari offers a great compromise between technicity, artistry, and efficiency. So once you really understand your tool, you will be capable of doing your texturing from one asset and never had to reproduce it again. Then you will be able to convert this into a metamaterial. And with this metamaterial, you will be able to texture all your upcoming assets without the need of redoing it from scratch every time. So let Mari work for you and try to understand how Mari works. You will see that the new tool also provides better efficiency and less dependency on other packages, which is exactly what we want. We want to be able to texture our asset within one package only without the need of having to do back and forths between a lot of different softwares.
Welcome to Meshmen Studio. In today's episode, we're gonna take a look at time, coffee, and why nodes don't lie. There's also gonna be a boxing match between Mori versus Mori. Let's get into it now. Let's begin with why nodes doesn't lie and why I prefer node-based workflow over layers. Okay, so here in Morify, I have imported a walking teapot from Pixar. It's in USD format as Mori 5 just got this new USD feature introduced. And I guess for studios in particular, USD is the future and will save us a lot of time as we now more and more frequently get USD natively in the pipeline. So here I'm adding open subdiv smoothing to the geometry, and then I'm adding some metallic materials here to the object. I'm using the Renneman shader here for Mori. All my materials is building on physical properties, and here I'm tweaking the look of the material. And then I'm adding a non-metallic material here and tweaking the actual look of this material. I'm reusing the same material twice here to make like a flame on top of this teapot. I mean, who doesn't want flames on their teapot, right? And I'm using a stencil to add this. I have to paint out some unwanted areas, and then I'm gonna focus on adding some breakup onto this asset after I've covered all of the areas that I want. So I'm using then a breakup mask that I created earlier using my geochannels. And this procedural mask is something that you can create and reuse in your pipeline. So that's really nice, and I can package it and just drag it from my shelf. And next up, I'm now gonna add some dirt here. So I'm first dragging my dirt shader on top, and then I'm gonna mask this in using the same technique as for the edge breakup mask that I created earlier. And I obviously need to tweak this a bit, so I'm doing a pass of hand painting, removing some dirt here and there, and maybe adding some dirt as well. You can also utilize additional procedural techniques if you like that. So yeah, it's up to you, really. And now here, we're gonna do some additional, I'm just adding some dirt here onto the feet and stuff like that. And yeah, so here's kind of the result after 15 minutes or so. Now let's take a look here under the hood and see what we have created actually. What the f just happened? So layers is great to get you up and running quickly, but it's also very hard to maintain complex assets using layers. So as you can see here from the underlying node graph here that was created, it's a lot of things happening here, and we might end up having a hard time to maintain scenes that become too slow, for example. And this in turn consumes one of the most precious resources we have in VFX, and that is time. So by using nodes, it's easier to maintain complexity, even the most complex scenes with hundreds up to thousands of UDIMs. Using nodes, we are in full control, and you know what? Nodes don't lie. In visual effects, it's quite common that we pop over to the kitchen while we wait for a lengthy process. I like coffee, so it's nothing wrong with that. To save some time, we can use the node graph in Mari. That opens up a whole slew of new possibilities and workflows. So yeah, let's take a look at how we can do that. So as you can see here, when I'm using the node graph, I have sections for different materials here. And I'm using a specialty node called a bake point to section off heavy parts of the node graph. And it's also a lot easier to share portions of my asset and reuse. And this in itself also saves time and resources in the end. Another quite overlooked time saver, studios for example, often use the Mari API. We can basically add our own workflows or even add to existing tools if we need to. So this in turn means while the texture artists pop over for a quick coffee, Mari also publishes the texture straight from within the software to the pipeline. But that's not all. Even independent artists can benefit from developments in the form of the oh so popular Mari extension pack, where we have a ton of time-saving add-on and tools. And I highly recommend using the Mari extension pack with Mari. Let's have a boxing match in Mari. In the blue corner we have Mari 4.7 and in the red corner we have the contender Mari 5. And let's get ready to rumble! So Mari 5 comes with faster baking speed. And this feature was developed in collaboration with Weta. So I took this old asset here and duplicated it a bunch of times. And looking at the UV view here, it contains 552 UDIM tiles. And that's quite a lot actually. So I'm going to bake down a cloud noise here using a bake point set to 4K in 16-bit. Participants, get ready to rumble in 2 rounds. Round 1, fight! In the blue corner, Mari 4 is chugging along. But here, look at the mic in the red corner. It looks like the rookie is going for a knockout. Mari 5 wins! That was too easy. Mari 5 isn't even sweating yet. Let's go for the heavyweight championship next. And that's 1104 UDIMs to be exact. Let's get ready to rumble! Round 2, fight! As in previous round, Mari 5 seems to take the lead here. Mari 4 is actually looking quite desperate. Is it the blows from the previous matches taking out his toll now? And as we can see here, Mari 5 is just dancing around Mari 4 in the ring. He's not even breaking a sweat. KO! Mari 5 wins! Mari 5 is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world! Let's have a look at another time-saving feature that was introduced in Mari 5, and it's actually in one of my old feature requests, and it's the bake point filter. Prior to the bake point filters, I had to post-process my procedural workflows in Nuke or do a destructive operation using the lay methods. And now with Mari 5, we can now benefit from the flexibility of the bake point direct in the node graph, and we can apply the filters using this one. So this will save both export and import time and will also make us consume less coffee in the process, right? And this is how you do it. So I'm back here using the teapot again, and we have some paint here that I want to apply and tweak a non-destructive filter on. So after my paint node here, I'm inserting a bake point and bake it out. Next up, I'm tweaking here the filter settings to be able to, for example, blur the effect here. So take a look here now what happens if I paint something upstream of this bake point. So as you can see here, the bake point becomes dirty, and that means it's out of date. And we can just rebake it, and the filter that we previously added is then reapplied with the same settings. And voila, we're in action. And this one will save a lot of time for me at least. Isn't it cute? Mari 4.7! Never give up, never surrender! That's the spirit! Welcome to Meshmen Studio. In today's episode,
Thank you very much, Peter. I do love your videos.
Well, I was trying.
You all had very different dynamics in there. It was great.
And Gaël, thank you for such a brilliant, detailed breakdown of your dragon. It's really great.
Thanks.
So so we're here for questions and answers. So if everyone wants to head over to the questions tab at the bottom right, I assume, of your browser, there should be a little questions button there. Ask some questions to our wonderful guests or myself or Charlie. And we hope we'll be able to answer them to the best of our ability. Yeah, I guess I can kick off and poke at Gaël and say, yeah, how long did it take you to texture that dragon asset?
Yeah, so good question, Rory. I think that in order to texture this guy, it was something like 3 complete days of work or something like that. So I already had a version of this asset that was textured before, and this version was textured into ZBrush. So into ZBrush, everything was baked onto the model, just one layer. Everything was destructive basically, and I just used the polypaint in order to create all the, let's say, some kind of concept of the texture. But then in Mari, I just wanted to have that to go really further and to be completely non-destructive and editable. So yeah, that's 3 days of texturing, which I think can feel quick, but it's also because once you really know your workflow, you can get an asset to be done really quickly. You're always redoing the same approach for your texturing, so you can apply what you have from one asset to another. So yeah, I feel that you can be really quick texturing a complete creature with Mari.
Have you had that meta material of yours since Mari 4.5, or was it more recently been updated?
So the meta material was something that I had before. I think it was even, I don't remember if it was like 4.5 or something like that, the version in which the material was introduced.
Yeah, I remember you making that in 4.5, I think, when we were working on it.
Yeah. So that was 4.5. I had this version of the material. Then I think that the new Arnold material was introduced into 4.6, I think. So yeah, right. I had to update the material, and I'm still using it. So yeah,
that's awesome. And somebody asked how the cavity map was generated.
So the cavity map is also done thanks to the text. So initially, what I did with the model was to do a lot of sculpting, and the sculpting was done thanks to a lot of alpha coming from texturing XYZ. And once everything was exported, initially what I did was I exported all the details within the displacement map, and it was a 32-bit displacement map. Then this displacement map was converted into a cavity map with Nuke. But then with the new version of Mari, with the version 5, so I was able to recreate the grading process I did for the displacement inside of Mari instead of having to use Nuke. So that's a huge time saver, I will say.
Awesome, thanks, Gaël. And just in case anyone hadn't caught that, so Mari 5 does have blurring, non-destructive blurring. That's kind of the feature is called the breakpoint filters, because Mari has a set of offline filters that you've always been able to apply to your painted layers. But if you wanted to do something to a procedural, you essentially have to group it all. If it was in layers, you have to group it all into a group layer, then duplicate that, convert that to a paintable layer, and then apply the filter. And as Peter's always told me, you have to spreadsheet remember the settings you used in the filter, because Mari would reset them every time you wanted to reapply it. So what this essentially does is, in the node graph, breakpoints can now apply any of these filters, and blur being one of the most commonly used of our filters, and also remember all the settings. So yeah, all that spreadsheet keeping, as you say, Peter, it goes away, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a huge time saver for me, at least. So yeah, grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm just append to that from the question that popped up from Diane, which is, are the breakpoint filters accessed from the filter menu as usual, or is there a new interface? That's done from the breakpoint node itself, and it's sort of hooking into the same filter system as the menu, but obviously non-destructively on the node.
Yes. There's this new tab inside the node properties of the breakpoint where you can access the filter stack. And it's not something that's coming to the layer stack, but in the layer stack, you could create a graph layer, and then within there, plug in the breakpoint and use it there, and it would still be part of your layer stack, but it's kind of using those systems. So you can kind of get it both places, but node graphs is the ideal place to use it.
And it
I
is
have a question.
the ideal place to do your texturing anyway, I would say.
Yes, that leads into my question that I was going to ask you guys, which was, I know both of you have varied experience in production and in freelancing as well. But overall, what sort of tip would you give to someone wanting to learn Mari for the first time, or somebody wanting to learn texturing in general and coming into the industry not knowing where to start?
From my perspective, just go straight to the node graph. Ditch the layers completely. Just go straight in. It's better. That's my point of view.
Yeah, I will say the same. So layer is really legacy, and it's really like an old way and destructive way, I will say, to do texturing. And what you really want to learn is when you need to learn how to do surfacing in general, is to understand what is a material, how do you layer a material, how do you you break it down basically, and you want to understand every layers of what is happening on this material. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you keep everything editable. So you do that in the node graph, because in the node graph you can have your different pieces. You can really build visually your materials, where in the layer tab is more legacy. You just like add things on top of things on top of things on top of things. So at one point you just have everything that's kind of starts to look messy. So yeah, that's why you really want to start with the node graph. But I will say really understand materials in general, and try to understand how the physicality of a material work also. Like, for example, the micro facet theory is something that is super interesting to learn and to understand. So once you understand how the surface need to be broken down, why you want to add some bumps information, then you will understand that you will be able to use this bump in order to create some color information, to have like a new specularity on top of your material. So that always kind of theoretical aspect that you want to also to tackle once you start texturing, I would say.
Yeah, great.
I was going to answer this question from Daniele. Yeah, Daniele. Saying some tools seem to rely on layers to work, like transfer maps, and are we planning to update the whole Mari system so we don't have to touch layers anymore? So yes, that is the direction we're going. We're kind of see layers as a legacy system that we still fully support, and they're not going anywhere, but we're not necessarily putting new functionality and features into layers. But they still layers still kind of benefit from the global system. For like example, if we add new procedural nodes to Mari, they'll be available in both because of the kind of shared procedural system, like our new gradient maps that we added in Mari 5. But yes, we have a list of tech debt areas to address in the node graph, like transfer maps, and I think flipping patches or copying patches, one of the two. There's some things where you have to do a dance, which I'm sure you all know, where you have to create a channel with the bottom transparency so it registers as a layer stack to then get that action to actually do its job. But yeah, we have these in our backlog, and it's just a matter of getting to them. So yeah, no, that's definitely the plan.
We do also have a question about whether there's any speed improvements coming with the performance changes to the Modo render. I don't know if you want to answer that, Rory.
I just need to double check the Modo team. I know they are working on a ray trace render engine, path tracing engine that they already have for their perspective cameras. Just need to see if we can get that to work with UV-based cameras or like texture baking. So currently it's super amazing and fast and efficient for perspectives, but of course for what we need with AOs and curvatures, we need to get that to actually bake down to patches. So that's something that we're looking at working on.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning quickly that a lot of people don't realize that you can actually redirect Mari's inbuilt Modo renderer to a newer version of Modo than what it ships with by default. So you may be currently using an older version of Modo, and you might be able to benefit from some of the existing changes that have been there as well. So it's definitely worth checking out whether you can point that to a new version if you have maintenance for it.
Yeah, we finally updated Modo version for Mari 4.7, but yeah, it's one of those additional things that we have to remember to do each time that we actually do a major release. So we won't have Modo 15 on there, I don't believe. I think it's Modo 14, but you can very easily redirect to your local executable to be able to make full use of the latest versions. Cool. I was going to ask Peter, what's the most common type of asset that you find yourself texturing?
Personally, it's a tank on my YouTube channel, but when I do work, I don't texture that much at the moment because I'm more supervising and doing things behind the scenes. But when I did texturing, it was more creatures and characters and stuff like that. So, and environments kind of is something that I've been doing a lot as well on some movies. So it's a bit of a mix, really. So. Yeah, but here in the studio when I do stuff, it's been mainly the tank and stuff. I'm starting to look into other assets for the the online YouTube channel as well. So we'll see that in the future.
But your tank is so beautifully UDIM'd and UV'd and retextured. This sort of
I did an update for the GNOME workshop where I've breaking down into this like almost 9 hours worth of material, and I totally remodeled it, re-UV'd it, and did it like for production type of workflow. And so yeah, if you haven't checked it out, it's on GNOME as well. So with the more up-to-date workflows for the Mori system. So awesome. Yeah.
And I'm just going to quickly answer this one from Derek. And are the new breakpoint nodes easily accessible through Python? Is it easy to create a bake or breakpoint buttons? Yes, absolutely. So Mari's API is very, very extensive and open. Of course, there are areas we need to extend further, and it's something we constantly work on. But for breakpoints, yes, we have. You can use the NoGraph API to be able to scan all the nodes in your object, looking for the breakpoint type, and then the breakpoint has its own class where you can call the actual bake function and check to see if it's dirty, etc. So yes, you can do all these things with the API, and it's kind of like a mission of ours where when we build new things, we make sure that the API is open for internal testing, so that we can kind of automate testing of stuff through Python, but also so it enables studios and the likes of VNs and extension pack to build on top of what we have as a framework, so that if we can't build the feature in its entirety in our first round of it, at least that it can be extended if needed to the usage of what the studio workflow pipeline is.
I believe there's a question that Gaël would like to answer, which will now not give me the button to make it live. If somebody else can, it's from Dahan. Hello. The button disappeared for me.
It's fine. Okay, so let me read the question. So do you suggest always to start first to focus on building solid final displacement map, and once I'm satisfied with it, then continue to work on diffuse and specular? I think it's a good way of building a complete texturing, because so what you want to do, or what I like doing basically, is as a sculptor, I really like to make sure that my asset is already working as a sculpting piece. And also what I like to do, because I like to understand surfacing in its entirety, is basically I want to make sure that the microfacet theory will work nicely on this model already, having some kind of gray material. So with this gray material, I can see that, for example, the specularity of the model is looking already fine. So the sculpt is working, is already doing what it's supposed to do. Then I can say that later my texturing will work nicely. And what I will have to focus on will be mainly to work on the albedo, to work on the diffuse map, on the color information. And I will not have to spend too much time, for example, making sure that I have a roughness map, and that this roughness map has some information that does not exist into the sculpt. So I feel that having to work or to fake too much the roughness map is also not helping to make sure that your surfacing will look physically correct, because you are trying to fake things. Whereas when you are starting with the sculpt, or when you are starting with all the displacement information first, and you make sure that this is correct and this is working, then your all the rest of your material will look nicely. So yeah, I will say make sure that your sculpting is working fine and is looking great already with a great material. Then later you can really start building from there. And also because you want your texturing to be, so what I'm doing is also I'm doing a procedural texturing. So everything is editable in my node graph in Mari. If I want to change the color, or if I want to change the aspect of the cavity, the color of the cavities, for example, and I want to add more dirt into it, I can do that directly using my my cavity mask, my cavity isolator. But this cavity isolator exists only because of the displacement map. Same with so for the dragon, something that I did was to have the color of the scale to look slightly darker in the middle of the scales, and I was able to do that really quickly with an adjustment node in the node graph using my scale isolator that I did thanks to the displacement. So I will say, from my sculptor approach, is really a good idea to have everything that is done and really working nicely in your displacements, so in your sculpts.
Cool. I would actually be interested to know if you work in a similar way at all, Peter, when you're texturing. Do you start with the displacement at all for your assets, or do you start with diffuse, or how do you do?
So yeah, I mean, it depends on what the stage asset comes in. Sometimes we don't even have a displacement when we start with an asset. So I definitely try to integrate the displacement as soon as possible. But sometimes I also build actually displacement in Mari when it comes to, using procedural workflows like tilables and like scales or skin stuff to kind of build a displacement in Mari rather than sculpting it. So, but for larger scale forms, yes, then I feel like I really want that as soon as possible to drive the procedural workflows, as Gaël explained as well. So, yeah, I'm kind of mixing the two a bit, maybe a bit more than Gaël explained. So yeah, that's kind of my approach, I think. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. I think we'll take one last question. That's nice for all of us. And each of you, can you list a favorite resource for learning Mari? Peter.
Yeah, that's my YouTube channel, Meshmen Studios.
It's your own channel.
What's it called again?
Meshmen
I remember the
name.
Yeah. Gaël, what would be yours? Oh, okay.
But
Peter,
yeah, there's a lot of other resources as well, so we shouldn't just take mine. Definitely. There's also a really good Discord, the Mari Discord, and not my Discord for learning Mari. That's the Mari Discord. We should post it somewhere. But I have a Discord as well. But yeah, there's a more like a Discord where all of the Mari hang out, the Mari guys. I don't have it on me right now. Maybe you have it.
I'll grab it.
Yeah.
Unless Jens is there and wants to beat me
to
it.
Yeah. And yeah, Jens extension pack, he's also there. Really good stuff there coming out from that Discord.
I will say the same for me. Is Meshmen Studio, best
and
channel.
Michael Wild, he's really good as well. I really like his stuff. So yeah,
it's going to plug him absolutely.
Some of the good tutorials, I learned a lot of valuable information from. Also I think the tutorial from Tom Newberry has a couple of tutorials that are super good and learn a lot of good things on how to texture skin. So I'm mainly focusing on creatures, and a lot of good stuff I learned also were from his tutorials. And I also have a channel, a YouTube channel. So if you want to have a look, guys, and it's focusing on creature texturing. So you can have a look at the complete tutorial I posted there.
Yeah, I was gonna list all three of those: Michael Wild and Peter Yu and Gaël. There's Tom Newberry did the skin paint job of the the helmet girl that's featured in Mario 4.7, and we're using that asset for the webinar here. But yeah, our learn.foundry.com website have a lot of Mario tutorials on the way, and there's a whole bunch of content there from ages ago. And Charlie, do you have anything to add?
So I have used all of those resources in general. I would say that if you do join the unofficial Mari Discord that our friend Jens is hosting kindly for us, you learn so much on a day-to-day just by being in that community and being able to interact with people like Peter and Gaël and seeing how they work and how they're discussing their workflows over and over about different areas. That's where we're there listening. It's where some of the greatest feature requests begin before they head over to the support team. And yeah, I mean, if you have a question there, I'm sure that it will end up as a Meshmen video at some point. So definitely a good place to go.
Yeah, it's a good resource for ideas and stuff. So
yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is there's a couple of questions in regards to can we have this? Can we have that? Definitely send your requests over to the Foundry support team. That's support@foundry.com if you want to contact them by email, or support.foundry.com via web if you want to have tracking.
Link in the chat.
There. Yep. Link in the chat, someone, please. But yeah, there was one earlier up as well, I think.
Yeah, that's the best way of getting your requests. Kind of, we collate them. The more people ask the same thing, it kind of brings it to the top of the priority from the community and from the studios, and we kind of judge the roadmap based on those needs.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we want to make Mari something that you enjoy using. So do feel free to send them over. We can't always guarantee it, but we'll definitely guarantee that we'll be looking at it. We will always
we read everything. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks very much, guests and audience. Thank you for coming to watch. Happy painting, everyone.
Happy painting.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
See you next time.
Bye.